Hi there. Hope you're doing really, really well today. And it is open class. We have questions from Gabriella, Jenny, and Santiago that we'll go over. And we might have some live questions as well, as I'm live here today. But before that, before we go to the questions, actually, I want to share something with you. You may have heard me say here or on Instagram that I'm working on this new book that I'm very, very excited about. Actually, the book is finished. It's called Tales of Courage. And I've taken 26 really powerful success stories from this channel and made them into a book. And I want to share with you what it looks like so far. I'm really excited about it. I think it'll be out very soon. But anyway, um, just to share the journey here of this making of the book, it is called again Tales of Courage, and there's going to be what do you call it, a subtitle too. It's going to be called Tales of Courage and 26 first-hand accounts of how insomnia ends. And so something like this, Tales of Courage, and there's a little forward. And then each chapter is going to be called just the story of whoever it is. So the first chapter is chapter 1, Brian's story. And I'm going to change the font here, but it's going to be something like this, Brian's story. And this is the first draft I got back from the editor. And then it's going to be a quote. So this is Brian's quote. When you have this problem, you're like, okay, maybe if I do a backflip into split and take 3 melatonins, I'll fall out. So the quote from Brian. And then there's going to be a title here again of the chapter, which is going to be Brian's story. And then it's going to be a reference to what Talk Insomnia episode it is and the air date, so that anyone who wants to hear it in spoken by the person in the chapter, they can do that as well. But what really has struck me working on this is the power in these stories. It's really remarkable. When we speak, as I just did, we do all this and like we say things over and over again. Like and when you cut all that out, when you cut out all the kind of fluff and extra words, then you just have the story, sort of the naked story there, and it's just so powerful. So anyway, I'm really excited about this. I think it can be change a lot of things for us, get the word out. So super excited about that. Now, let's go. With that being said, let's head over to open class. I'm going to share my screen with you. So how do you do this? Stop this screen. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to share my other screen where I have the questions for open class with everyone. Here we go. Laura's here, by the way. Hi, Daniel. Got a notification. I'm glad you're here, Laura. And who's this? Watching at 4 a.m. All right. Well, glad you're here. Hope you can learn something that can be really helpful. Okay, so with that said, let's head over to our questions. Gabriella has a question, or a couple of them for us. Actually, 5 questions, I think it is. Let's get into it. Gabriella says, I just had a couple of questions and wondered if I could get some advice. Which brings me to, of course, nothing is medical advice, just general thoughts and questions that come to mind as we read this. Okay, brace yourself. This is a long one. And I actually try to sort of shorten it down, but it's hard because then you change the whole story. So I'm going to read it through and we're going to get to the questions. Gabriella says, I generally sleep better now, although I'm still on the road to recovery. I see myself getting out of this and sleeping well again. That's wonderful. So happy to hear that. I used to sleep very well and valued sleep so highly. And I think for me, that is what has made this journey so difficult, because even though it hasn't been long, in the early stages, much of my anxiety was based on being scared I would never be as good a sleeper as I was, and being anxious constantly because I never thought I was even capable of not sleeping well. I just have to really quickly take a second to recommend anyone hearing this to listen to a Talk Insomnia episode with Alina. I don't know the number, but I titled it, either the thumbnail or the title of it is like, you don't call anyone a good breather. And that just came to mind as I was reading this, because breathing is just like sleeping. It's this passive process that happens all by itself when we don't think about it. And we don't have an identity when it comes to our breathing. We don't think of ourselves as, I'm a good breather, or he's a bad breather, or something like that. It's just something we do. But often we can attach this sort of identity to ourselves when it comes to sleep. I used to be a good sleeper. Now I'm a bad sleeper. He's an okay sleeper, etc. In reality, sleep is just something passive. So we may have slept very well for all of our lives simply because we weren't trying to sleep and we weren't thinking about it. That doesn't mean we were a good sleeper, because we weren't able to do anything. So when we don't have this identity anymore, when we don't think of ourselves as a good or bad, we just sort of see that it's just like breathing. I think that things can get really a lot easier. So just a little side trip there. Okay, even in this period, I have some good weeks, days where I was not focused on sleep, and haven't been anxious or try to make it happen, and I slept well. I actually, it says I managed to sleep well, which again, I have to consciously stop myself from interrupting here because this can go on forever. But when we think of these terms like dualistically, like good or bad, or like um, manage, then it shows that we're thinking that sleep is something that we somehow can control. So I just want to point that out. And when we let go of that idea to that it can be controlled, then it happens all by itself. Okay. I had a few sessions of CBTI, which changed my mindset, but it really made me put pressure on sleep and made the situation worse, if I'm honest. For example, I had a really good week of sleep, and then I had a few bad days, and my therapist told me to try a distraction technique before bed and to try to get out of bed every 20 minutes. I was up and down the stairs, and this gave me so much frustration and anxiety. Super, super common experience, and I'm quite critical, to be honest with you, of traditional CBTI because it has this implied controllability element. It's implied that sleep can be controlled by using like techniques, which, as we see with Gabriella, often causes so much more anxiety and more preoccupation. Although the education part can be helpful, but again, we see, by the way, we see this like good and bad, like this dualistic thinking. Which, I mean, no criticism. This is all coming from a place where I want to help anyone out there. But when we think of sleep as like this was a good night, this was a bad night, it very easily leads us into win or loss thinking. Like if we sleep, that's a win. Yes, I slept. But then that's not helpful because then as soon as we celebrated the win, it's like, yes, that feels great. But then we go into, okay, how can I do it again? It leads to performance anxiety when we see sleeping as something good or a win. And when it's bad, then it's the same thing. If it's bad, I have to do something. It leads us to performance anxiety again. So this win or lose thinking, being aware of that can be really helpful. Okay, my questions are, number one, mostly I'm able to fall asleep. And okay, I'm trying to stop myself from commenting on able, but I would say more like sleep happens. All right, but just a little side note. I have to really like be more mindful of myself right now. Okay, I'm going to try to just read. Mostly, I'm able to fall asleep without problems. However, I notice my bad nights are when I try and subconsciously monitor sleep, manage my sleep. For example, yesterday, I was actually watching your most recent video when I dozed off for a bit. And then when I decided to sleep, it was a bit of a struggle because I kept thinking, okay, let's see if I can sleep now. My problem is I'm not really that anxious anymore because I now understand how sleep works and that I cannot control it. However, sometimes I feel like I'm monitoring if I'm falling asleep. Then I get racing thoughts. So I try to distract myself with a podcast or something, but it's hard for me to not use this as an effort to distract my mind. It's the sense of letting go during bedtime and not focusing on whether or not I'm sleeping. In a sense, I'm asking if you have any techniques for turning off thoughts at bedtime. Is using a podcast, etc., a sleep effort? This is maybe the most common question I get, which is like, do you have any tips for like turning off my thoughts at bedtime? And we also have the follow-up question here: is using a podcast as a distraction? Is this a sleep effort? Well, I would say this: thoughts are like these little like messages from the brain. It's like a thought is just when a particular idea just surfaces up to consciousness. That's a thought, right? It's a little signal. It can be something super, like that shirt is green. That's a thought. That's a light. That's a thought. It's like we probably don't pay much attention to those thoughts. They kind of are very random. Sometimes it can be more of a message, like what if you don't sleep, like something like that. But they are just messages. They're just little messages again from the brain that surfaces to consciousness. And here's the thing: if you think of a friend that has a message for you, and you're like, stop talking, stop talking, that friend is going to be like, what? You don't want to hear what I'm saying? I'm gonna really make you listen to me. And so basically the thing is, like, thoughts are always present. There are always thoughts in our mind. It is when we try to stop them that they bother us, that they become kind of like relentless, like recurrent, like. So I would say anything we do as a distraction to try to not have thoughts makes us have a more bothersome experience with thoughts. So I think just letting them be, observing them without any further intent, that's actually how they bother us less and less. So I think that's the answer to that one. And is using a podcast a sleep effort? I think if the intent with the podcast is like, I have to distract myself so that I no longer monitor my sleep so I can sleep, it is a sleep effort. If the end goal we're looking to achieve is something related to sleep, then it is a sleep effort. Like, oh, I'm going to do some yoga so that I'm more relaxed, so that I sleep. Yeah, that's a sleep effort. It's like an indirect sleep effort. All right. So I just want to, before we go on, I was just say Veronica says exactly about the same. You don't call anyone a bad breather. So nicely, to hear you that you agree with that. And I forgot to say Veronica was actually going to be here today, but had something else come up. So another time, I hope to have Veronica with us here today. Skip Ernest says hello, hello. I was looking, where can I write an email, but didn't find any. You said interested in your videos, but English is not my first language, so I couldn't catch it. I will just say, Skipper, check in the description of any video, and it says there's a link there to submit a question for open class. Nathan says, how can I not monitor thoughts? And this, I think, is very similar to how can I stop thinking about something. It's basically we're attempting to control something that we don't have control over. So when we stop, when we like, I have to stop monitoring thoughts, then we're probably going to monitor them more. Because whenever we try to stop a process, then that the brain thinks is a safety thing, it thinks it's important, then the brain is going to want to do more and more of that. So I think paradoxically, it's when we allow the monitoring to happen without judging it, just kind of seeing it. Okay, I'm monitoring asleep now, and nothing further. Then I think that is so helpful. And nothing changes overnight, but like when we just when the effort to stop monitoring or stop thoughts fades away, everything just becomes more peaceful. So I think that can be really helpful to hear. Thanks, by the way, everyone for jumping in here and commenting. All right, so let's go to the second question here. How do I get to a point where, like before, when I went to bed, I would just naturally think of pleasant things, naturally enjoy what I'm listening to before, and just doze off? This is another common question, which is like, how do I sleep like I slept before? And the answer to that, in my opinion, is you didn't try to sleep like before. Before there was none of that. Sleep just happened. You weren't trying to sleep like before, right? So when we're no longer trying to sleep like we did before, then sleep happens all by itself. So that's I think something that can takes a little, maybe it's a little, takes a little bit maybe to wrap your head around it, but I think that is the answer to this one. All right, number 3. Also, is telling myself something over and over again a sleep effort, such as my thoughts don't control me. Sorry for all being all over the place in email. I just don't want to create any sleep efforts. However, before my insomnia, I did listen to things before I went to bed. However, now I'm more doing it to distract my mind, as I know this makes sleep more likely for me. Yes, this to me is a question of the mantra. I get this question all the time, which is, Daniel, is it okay if I tell myself being awake is not dangerous? Being awake is not dangerous, over and over again. Is that going to help me? I think the key thing to understand here is that when we use anything in an effort to sleep or to not be anxious or something like that, it leads to the opposite place of where we want to be. And that includes like when we use a mantra in that way. When we have this idea, if I just say this over and over and over and over again, my brain will finally get it. Not really. It's again like we're trying to push and push and push the brain to do something, and it pushes back and back and back and back. So I think the awareness of like, oh, I'm creating a mantra now to try to control things, and just having that awareness, that can be really, really helpful. And I think Gabriella also points out something that's common, that a lot of people tell me, I used to exercise before bed and I had no problem sleeping, but I see now that I'm making the exercise before bed into a sleep effort. And that is very common. And again, just awareness of that, seeing that it's nothing strange or unusual, I think that can be really helpful. Okay, so that was number 3. Let's go to number 4. I also wanted to ask about befriending wakefulness. I definitely recognized this as a problem for me, as much of my anxiety was based around the fear of closing my eyes and not sleeping, i.e., being awake. I have a question though. Is my aim to just enjoy the night, regardless of whether or not I sleep? If I'm sleepy, do I just continue what I'm enjoying and allow my body to fall asleep when it wants to? Or do I stop that and close my eyes? Much of CBTI states we should try and sleep again when we feel sleepy. Very, very well. I think the answer to this to me becomes that it sort of answers itself, meaning if we feel like, okay, now I'm sleeping, I think I'd like to sleep now, or maybe I'll sleep now. We close our eyes and just sort of see what happens. I think that's actually how what all humans do. It can very well appear that someone who doesn't have struggle sleeping, they can close their eyes and they just know that they're going to sleep, and because they know it, they have that confidence, then sleep happens. But in reality, the person who doesn't have any struggle sleeping, they don't really know what's going to happen. They just, yeah, they assume that they're going to sleep, but there's no thought behind it. There's no, no pondering about it. So they close their eyes and they kind of see what's going to happen, and then they fall asleep. And I think the same thing is true for all humans. Like, it's when we may assume that maybe we're going to sleep, but you know we don't we don't ponder more, then it happens by itself. So again, if someone feels sleepy, they close their eyes and they see if sleep can happen. I think that's totally fine. But the problem, I think, becomes like in when there are rules around it. When it's like, okay, if you feel sleepy, then you should do this. If you're not sleepy, you should do that. It's not how sleep happens. It's not how these natural processes like thinking or breathing or sleeping happen. So I think that's the tricky thing with CBTI. Also, what can be so tricky is this when you're told that, okay, you should only like try to sleep, which doesn't really make sense because we can't really, I mean, we can't make sleep happen, so we can't really try to sleep, right? But people say try to sleep when you feel sleepy, which sort of makes sense because, okay, it makes sense not to like go to bed and close your eyes and try to sleep when you don't even feel sleepy, right? True. But on the flip side, if someone says only try to sleep when you feel sleepy, that often leads to self-monitoring. These questions of like, okay, am I sleepy? No, I'm not sleepy. Let me continue. Am I sleepy? Am I not sleepy? Am I sleepy enough? And then just the monitoring itself is kind of stressful, anxiety provoking, keeps us from sleeping. So I think when we see that, sometimes we can feel just tired and close our eyes and rest, and we end up falling asleep. And if we didn't feel sleepy, sometimes we can be really sleepy, and then as we start drifting off, we sort of become scared and we don't wake. So my point here is that uh, there is no rules or like any right or wrong here. I think just following what we feel is right, I think, really helps. And I also think that if you're awake at night and you're enjoying what you're doing, uh, and you feel sleep and you like to sleep, that's fine. But if you'd like to continue watching, that's also fine. I know this sounds sort of very fluid and fuzzy, but it is. And that's kind of the point, that when we think there are rules, that gets us into some struggle. But when we see that there are no rules and we just can do what we feel is what we want to do, that I think really helps. Okay, so let's do some live questions before we go back here. B181 says, what do you think about those who say that in order for exercise to work, you need to sleep well? Yeah, I would say that, firstly, I don't think there's any evidence to support that. I will admit I haven't looked into like that particular like literature so much, but you can almost I can pretty much say that with confidence, even though I haven't, because um, you to answer that question, like, for exercise to work, you need to sleep well. You need to do like a really big randomized study where you took like, I don't know, at least hundreds of people, and for a long period of time, like, kept them from sleeping well and measure their exercise output, and then the other group not have them not sleep well and measure their output, and something like that, which hasn't been done, at least to my knowledge. If anyone knows of such a study, let me know. But we have like a lot of anecdotal evidence that shows that it's probably not like that. Meaning, we have this guy, Karsten Warholm, and there are probably thousands of stories like this. I just know this one. He won the 400-meter relay in the last Summer Olympics. In this, like, he like shattered the previous world record, and he hadn't slept the night before. It was a sleepless night, and I think even 2 nights before he hardly slept, right? And we also have, just from our own channel here, Brittany, in one of the Talking Insomnia episodes, who did a Ironman triathlon after like multiple sleepless nights. So I think there isn't, yeah, again, I think we can perform exceptionally well when it comes to like physical exercise, and even like high like mental acuity. Like, we can be really foggy, and like when we're doing kind of this ordinary things during the day, it can be tricky if we haven't slept much. But when it's something really needs our attention, we're having an exam or something important, we can sort of mobilize resources that we didn't even know we had within us. So um, what do you think? In order for exercise to work well, you need to sleep well? I do not believe that to be true. That's my shorter answer. Skip Ernie, at 4 a.m., there's no book or movie that I could watch just to have fun. The only thing I didn't try is playing my favorite game because I'm avoiding a phone during the night. Okay, now this is another common one, which is like in the middle of the night, I'm tired. There's nothing I really want to do, right? And so the first thing I would say to someone that has Skip Ernie's question is like, at 4 a.m., how do you know it's 4 a.m.? How do you know it's 4 a.m.? It's a I mean, it's, what does it call that? It's a rhetorical question in a way, right? I'm assuming that whoever told me that knows that it's 4 a.m. because they checked, and that in itself is sort of an invitation to not know what time it is, because the brain loves numbers, like it loves crunching numbers, and we give it like a number, like it's this time, then it goes like, okay, how much have I slept? How much have I time to sleep? What if this happens? What that happens? So I think just not knowing the time can really help. Not knowing what time it is, resisting the urge to know the time, just letting the time be this timeless period. I think that can help. And the second thing is, if someone just doesn't feel like doing anything in particular at night, then I think that the path of least resistance is what helps the most. I often emphasize that you can do something that's fun because it's kind of counterintuitive. Like, why should I do something that I enjoy? But sometimes there's nothing we enjoy. Sometimes we just want to rest. Sometimes we just want to rest, or have a little snack, or whatever makes that moment the least painful, whatever feels easiest at that moment, I think is the way to go. And if you want to play your favorite game, I think that's fantastic. I know it's a little tricky because it may display the time, and if it does so, well, we can also use that to our advantage. Meaning we can sort of monitor our reaction to seeing the time and just learn about ourselves that way. But playing a video game by itself, I think, is totally fine. I think the whole idea that light disrupts our sleep, I think I don't believe that to be very true. I think that the fear of light disrupting your sleep, that has a big impact. The light itself, not so much. I don't think so. Nathan says, I've definitely noticed when I'm checking the time past a certain time, my anxiety goes up. Very helpful observation, and sort of an invitation again to not know the time. I'm sitting in my living room and there's a clock. When I can't sleep, I go there. I have that too. And you know what I do? When I am up at night and I know I'm not going to sleep and I feel kind of restless or anxious or something like that, I go up to the living room and I know where the clock is, and I take it down and I turn it upside down. And then sometimes my wife comes up and she's like, "Oh, you didn't sleep much last night?" Yeah, I know. And she knows because the clock is like upside down. So I think that I do that. Just want to share it. All right. Let's go to, I think this is the last one from Gabriella. Additionally, number 5, do you think I will be able to get back to sleeping as well as I used to? Uh, Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I think, like Alina said in that episode I refer to, where she talks about her own journey, that not only can we sleep well again, just like we did in the past, but with awareness, which is sort of amazing, because we can we can learn so much from the struggle that we apply to other areas of life, and then not only do we sleep well, but we just see life in a different way. We're just like, we no longer try to control other people's ideas, other people's reactions. We just let go of so many other things. So I think not only can you sleep well without any struggle like you did before, but I think you know it can be life changing. You can see so many other things in a different way. Absolutely. Okay, Gabriella, thanks so much for sending these questions to us, and let us move to Jenny's message. Jenny says, "Hi, Daniel. I've struggled with insomnia on and off for 5 years, and it has got progressively worse. I'm now in a bad place of many sleepless nights and the anxiety that it causes. I've learned so much from your channel and feel very educated in my quote unquote problem, but I'm struggling to take the practical steps needed. For example, I can't seem to abandon all sleep efforts. I get up when I can't sleep, but I'm constantly monitoring myself to see if I'm sleepy yet, which I rarely am. I don't know how to fully accept being awake. It seems too scary a concept. I don't know that I need, I know that I need to accept and face whatever comes next in the insomnia journey, but I can't seem to actually do that in a practical sense. Any advice would be appreciated. Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, as far as the monitoring, we talked about this a little bit earlier that, monitoring in itself um, can lead us to be like aroused, right? We're like, am I sleeping enough? Like those questions and that monitoring can make us alerted, right? So I often say that not monitoring is helpful. And then the follow-up question from Nathan becomes, so how do I stop monitoring? And here comes kind of one of the paradoxes, which is then I would say allow monitoring to happen. It's so paradoxical, right? Made a tweet out of this the other day where I had this like um, fake interaction with the client. Client says, "Why can't I sleep?" Me, insomnia happens when we pay a lot of attention to sleep. Clients, how do I stop thinking about sleep? Me, allowing thoughts to happen. Client, that sounds paradoxical. Me, I think it is. I think that it is the paradox here. Really, it is a paradox. But some things like when we just have awareness of this, that okay, I'm monitoring whether I'm sleepy enough. I know that that can lead me to be more anxious. I know monitoring is not helpful. But when I do allow monitoring to happen without judgment, I just observe it happening. That's when peace happens. Like it's a little mysterious, right? But that element of mystery really ties into this message from Jenny, because Jenny has this cognitive understanding that okay, facing this fear and accepting that I'm awake at night, that is really what's going to help me. But how do I do that? How do I get there? What practical steps can I take? And to me, there is nothing we can do. There is nothing we can do except educating ourselves and being aware. And how is that even helpful? Someone may ask. Well, I think it is actually helpful because it is when we're pushing ourselves to not be scared, pushing ourselves to accept wakefulness. That is when there's a struggle. And that is when what we want to happen doesn't happen. But when we see that, okay, I am scared, and I know it helps me to not be scared, but I can't really do anything about that. When we just observe that and sort of see that that mysterious transformation when finally the brain sees that there's nothing to be afraid of, there's no need to monitor, everything is okay, that transformation is always going to be a little mysterious. And somehow when we see that and we no longer push for it to happen, I think everything gets easier. I know that this is not something like, Jenny and the many others who hear this want, you're looking for something practical, something to do, something to hold on to. But I think that is when we're trying to hold on to something, that's when we actually don't arrive where we want to be. So a little fuzzy, but I hope it makes sense, Jenny. And just, ask me questions again, and I'll try to answer in a more meaningful way as hopefully I learn more and the teaching progresses, etc. But thanks so much, Jenny. And I hope that helps. Um, all right. Peace is here and says, detachment from the desire to sleeping well is my goal. Is it healthy to think that way, to set a goal, or is it maybe counterintuitive? Yeah, it's a fantastic question. It shows so much understanding. I think that whenever we have a goal, goals are tricky for sure. If we see that I want to be detached from the desire to sleep, I think that's very sound. Like, you know, I think that too. Like, I want to be detached from a lot of things in my life, but I think just being aware of that, being aware of like detachment from the desire to sleep would be helpful, and it's something nice. I think that's all. Like when we make that a goal, that automatically calls for like action and monitoring. Like how close am I to my goal? What can I do to further my goal? Oh no, I didn't meet my goal. Like, so I think just having it as something that, knowing that is helpful, but not making it a goal, I think really helps. Sometimes people ask me about goals, and then I do share that I think there are some helpful goals, which are, to me, things like I can be kind to myself even if I'm really anxious. I can not criticize myself even if I had a sleepless night, because those are sort of non-goals. They're goals in a sense, but they're just goals that lead us towards being kinder to ourselves and gentler to ourselves. So I think those can be helpful, but other than that, goals can be quite tricky, as I know you already see there. It's a very, very insightful question. All right, let's go to the last question for today, or a message from today. It's from Santiago. Hi, Coach Daniel. Your channel and book, Set It and Forget It, helped me tremendously last year when I had a case of insomnia that lasted from late December 2020 to about March 2021. Thanks to your content, I slowly regained my sleep confidence, and I've been able to sleep great and live a normal life. I've been sleeping pretty well for much of a full year, and I guess I'm going through what you call a speed bump. 4 days ago, I had a stressful situation at work. It's now resolved. During this situation, I anticipated I wasn't going to have good sleep, and that's exactly what happened. Not sleeping well for the last few nights has gotten me thinking a bit too much about sleep, and the fear of re-experiencing full-blown insomnia has emerged. Thanks to your teachings, I do feel I'm better equipped to handle the situation this time around. I wanted to share with you what just happened, and maybe you have some words of encouragement for someone like me that thought insomnia was a thing of the past, and out of nowhere, I'm worried again about sleep. Thank you for all you do. You're literally saving lives, best Santiago. That made me smile so much. The last thing, so nice to hear that. All right, so first thing I want to say is that it's speed bumps, very, very normal, so normal, very typical path of the part of the journey of leaving the struggle behind. Anyone in speed bumps, check out the speed bumps playlist, link in the description of any new video. I think that can help. Now, another thing that I think we could really focus on here is what Santiago said, that I now am scared of re-experiencing that insomnia I had in the past. And I think what can really help to see is that insomnia is not a sleep problem. As odd as that sounds, right? Insomnia is not a sleep problem. Rather, insomnia is a surface manifestation of fear. When we are scared, we sleep less, and that is completely normal. When imagine if we're about to fall asleep and we remember that the oven is on, right? Oh, we're in danger here, and we fall asleep. That's not quote unquote supposed to happen. Our brain wants to keep us safe, so we are made awake when we think we are in danger. Insomnia, sleeping little, is a surface manifestation of fear, just like palpitations. When we are scared, our heart beats faster, kind of to prepare us for some fight or flight thing. And when we don't see that, when we think like, what's wrong with my heart? When we don't see that it's just a surface manifestation of fear, we can be like, stop. I have to stop my heart from beating this fast, which makes us even more scared, because now we're scared of the heart beating fast, and then it beats faster, right? So when we're sort of in this level of like surface, we don't understand what's going on in the bottom. It's a little tricky, but when we see that, I don't really have a sleep problem. It's just that I'm scared. Well, then if we look at the sentence from Santiago, it becomes like, I'm now scared of becoming scared again, right? Because we understand that insomnia is a surface manifestation of fear. And when we see that, it can, things can be, it can almost become like almost silly. I don't use that word lightly or belittling anyone's struggle, which can be so intense, right? But when we just fully see that I'm scared of being scared, I think that can help so much, because then we see that there's actually nothing there. Like there's nothing tangible, like there's no danger or threat here. I'm just afraid of an emotion. I'm scared of feeling scared. And so I think that that's something that can really help. And I made a video about this, about fear of fear, that you can find um, in the content here. And the other thing was resistance. The other thing was to talk about resistance. So insomnia is really, I think of it as like a cycle of resistance. So someone has a choppy night for whatever reason, right? Maybe they're worried about something, or something happened and they sleep little. And then that surfaces, that becomes a point of attention, like, oh no, I didn't sleep much. I don't want that to happen again. And now we're resisting being awake. There's resistance to that. We're pushing back against. We're trying not to be awake, and then because of that, there's now like preoccupation and worry, and then it happens again, and there's more resistance. No, that can't happen again, and then this cycle can be like self-fulfilling, like, or self-propagating, I should say. And when we see that, okay, insomnia itself is just like a cycle of resistance. When there's no more resistance, when we're not trying to not be awake, then sleep happens by itself. Then we can also see that when we start having these thoughts of like, okay, how can I prevent myself from having trouble sleeping again? Then we can see that, oh, the attempt at trying to preventing myself from insomnia again, that is insomnia in itself, right? The attempt to prevent it is what causes that which we don't want to experience, right? And so again, when we see this, it can really it can really help us let go, because then when we're no longer trying to prevent it, we're doing things to not have it again, so to speak. That I think can really help when somebody's in Santiago's situation. So, oh, sorry, I pricked the wrong button there. So, yeah, I want to conclude there. I want to thank everyone who's been here, and as always, questions, put them in the comment section or send them to open class, and we shall go from there. It's been really nice having you all here today. Thanks so much for everything, and see you soon. Until then, bye-bye.